The joint law enforcement operations in the Northwest will continue on all major and local routes to clamp down on crime over the long weekend. The Provincial Department of Community Safety and Transport has appealed to road users to be patient and comply with all traffic regulations. Over 6,000 traffic fines have been issued to motorists in the Northwest as part of the ongoing Safer Easter holiday operations. Our reporter Refiloe Seboko joins us now with an update on this story. Refiloe, thank you for making time. So over 6,000 traffic fines being issued there in the Northwest. What are most of these for?
Well, drinking and driving is one of the concerns that the community safety in the Northwest, together with the police, are having the challenge that during these operations, most drivers are drinking alcohol and driving, and this is why they have heard, amongst others, issue of arrests of people who are drinking and driving, the Easter operations that they had, the joint law force Easter operation that they had, but also an issue of fatalities. And maybe let me just welcome a spokesperson of the Department of Public Community Safety and Transport in the Northwest Province, Seboko. Thank you so much and welcome to Newzroom Afrika. The operation that started last week in preparation of the Easter, the biggest thing that you just said that you had in Stilfontein. Give us a wrap and an overview of how things are looking in the province.
Thank you, Fifi. Good afternoon to your viewers. Well, we have had these operations, law enforcement operations, since towards the end of last month, and MEC Lehari of the Department of Community Safety and Transport Management in the Northwest has been leading these joint law enforcement operations. Unfortunately, we have lost 5 lives since Thursday last week. In total, since the beginning of this month, 14 lives. This morning, we lost a life of a pedestrian in Klerksdorp. And we also lost the lives of about 3 pedestrians in total. It's a concern because most of these people who are being hit by vehicles, it happens especially in the early hours of the morning, around 12 o'clock midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And often you discover that they are coming from taverns. So the message from the MEC is that people should be careful. People should take their own lives in their own hands. People should think twice before they get onto the vehicles, because most of this, the recklessness, as you have indicated, is one of the problems that we have noticed. These operations that we have been having, we have been able to arrest 15 undocumented persons who have been handed over to the immigration authorities, and the operations are ongoing. We're going to continue having these operations to ensure that we keep the number of fatalities as low as possible. Somebody would say, do we have enough laws in this country to ensure that we reduce fatalities? Now, we can have as many laws as possible. However, we need to change the behavior. As a driver, as a person, as a South African, as a member of the community, whenever I get behind the wheel, I should ask myself if I'm going to comply only when I see the law enforcement officer, or I'm going to comply because it's the right thing to do.
And I think because this is not the first operation, right? The department has had previous operations, and the issue of driver behavior remains to be of concern. How is the department looking into it that it doesn't repeat itself, and so that motorists are aware of regulations that they need to follow at all times?
We communicate. We're using all forms of communication, including your formal as well as your social media communication platforms, to share the message, to ensure that people comply. We have these law enforcement operations that I've spoken about, those that have been led by the MEC, even in the absence of the MEC. Even today, we have got various operations throughout the province. We have what we call speed relay. That is, when you move from one town to the next, you would find law enforcement officers waiting for you. The aim is not to be punitive. The aim is to be corrective. The aim is to ensure that when people travel, they feel safe. The aim is to ensure that those that are not complying with the law, stringent and punitive measures will be taken against them. We are appealing to everybody who is on the road to comply, to ensure that you don't exceed speed limit. The trend we are noticing is that even in rural areas, even in areas where you don't expect people to be speeding to be driving with more than 80 kilometers per hour. We're beginning to see that there are horrific accidents taking place there, not only on arterial national roads, but also in localities where you don't expect people to be speeding. Now we are appealing to everybody who is a driver, who happens to be on the road, to be responsible.
Are patterns the same? These operations, you said the biggest that you had in the province was still contained, but you did have equally here in Yakamudiri Muleba, Bojanava, and Dr. Rutsukhumutsimampati. Are patterns the same, and what is of your concern based on what you've seen and noticed in these different districts?
The pattern is the same, because remember, it's not a pattern in the province, it's a pattern in the country. Someone who is traveling from a sister province, a neighboring province, will be coming to Northwest. Now, people in the Northwest will also be traveling to other provinces. So, until we as a nation begin to change our attitude, we begin to change how we behave on the road, the law enforcement officers have a saying. They say, whenever an accident is happening, or whenever an accident has occurred, they look at the seat of the driver and the steering wheel, because often what happened, what went wrong is there. We have noticed from previous accidents that at times the driver would be busy on the phone, chatting, typing, texting, or would be focusing on something else and not on the road. Often people in the vehicle will scream when the vehicle they are driving is about to hit the one in front, to alert the driver, who often will be focusing on something else. So these are some of the things that we are beginning to notice. We are appealing to everybody, even people inside the vehicle. If I'm traveling with you, and you notice that I'm not suitable, I'm not in a proper state of mind to be driving. In other words, I've taken one too many. It's your responsibility as well to say, but you can't drive us in this state. The law enforcement officers are there to ensure that there is compliance. But the first person who must ensure that I comply, it is I as a responsible citizen.
It must be one of a concern that, the numbers that we got, that over 6,000 traffic fines that were issued during this Easter period in the province. That talks to, people not adhering to the regulations of the traffic. In terms of intensifying the operations that will be coming, not only during the Easter season, but even going forward, the plan for the department.
We actually have been having this plan since we began these operations, this law enforcement operations, since the transport month in October last month. They dipped a bit just before Christmas. We picked when elsewhere around the country they began on the second week of December. We began in the mid-November, and we continue until the first week of February. It dipped a bit, and by the first week of last month already, we had begun this operation. So we begin to see that in as much as there are those who are not complying, majority of South Africans are beginning to hear our message and are beginning to comply. We're talking about 6,000 tickets that we have been issuing, or that we have issued since the beginning of this month. We have stopped more than 3,000 vehicles, and they were searched. And from those, we began to see that there are people who actually are complying. Few will not be complying, but we believe that in time, people will begin to see where we are going, and people will begin to comply.
Will the operation tomorrow continue also in the entire province, in the district?
As I'm talking with you now, there are law enforcement officers in almost every major roads in the province. So these operations will be continuing. As I said, they began at the beginning of, in the last 3 weeks, and going to continue to at least the end of this month. We'll be having these operations. We're not going to stop because Easter has passed, but we're going to continue having these operations because the reality is that people don't stop traveling in Easter. There will be a peak, but beyond that peak, there will be people still traveling, and there will be those who will be contravening the laws. So we are there to ensure that everybody complies.
Thank you so much for your time. Seboko is the spokesperson of the Department of Community Safety and Transport in the Northwest Province, Clement, indicating and saying that, confirming that these operations will be ongoing. Some of the greater concern that they are having is issues of driver behavior, pedestrians as well, that have had one too many, and they were also noticing that some of these accidents are happening at around midnight, which is a concern for them as the department. But like he said, that together with the other stakeholders, they will be continuing into these operations on this Easter weekend.
Refiloe, Seboko, live to us from the Northwest. Thanks for that update.